Dramatic changes at one of the biggest glaciers in Antarctica
The Arctic blast moves east across the United States.
The weeks to come in Europe are finally going to bring about a huge transformation. The first Arctic cold blast will hit the western and central portions of the continent over the weekend and into the first half of next week, according to the forecast for the continent's weather pattern, which predicts the formation of a deep low in the north. This weekend, the weather pattern is about to change after a historic heatwave and extremely warm weather from September to mid-October. By early next week, a big portion of the continent will experience a significant temperature change along the cold front that is currently sweeping across it. First frosts of the season are anticipated in western and central Europe's lowlands. Is Arctic cold blast and polar vortex the same phenomenon? Let's find out. A polar vortex and an Arctic blast are related phenomena. However, they differ in several ways and cannot be confused with one another. The distinction between the two is broken down as follows. The Arctic blast is a weather phenomenon known as an Arctic blast, is characterized by a rapid and considerable surge of Arctic air into lower latitudes. It typically occurs when a potent high-pressure system forms over the Arctic or the northern polar regions. An Arctic blast-related cold air mass can cover a substantial portion of the globe and deliver exceptionally low temperatures to areas that are not used to such intense cold. Arctic blasts can cause sharp temperature changes, powerful winds, and snowfall in the impacted locations, creating risky and dangerous circumstances. On the other hand, the polar vortex over the North Pole and the South Pole is a significant pattern of air circulation. The Arctic areas are home to this persistent, sporadic phenomenon that lasts the entire winter. The polar vortex is a region of low pressure with powerful winds that move clockwise in the southern hemisphere and counterclockwise in the northern hemisphere. When the polar vortex weakens or is disrupted, it can extend and send a low or displaced piece of frigid air southward into lower latitudes. This can happen occasionally because of specific meteorological conditions. Long-lasting periods of extreme cold, powerful winds, and an increased likelihood of winter storms can all be experienced when a polar vortex lobe moves into areas further south. In recent years, as severe winter weather events happened in places like North America, the phrase polar vortex has drawn a lot of attention. Yet, polar climatic systems frequently experience it. In a nutshell, an Arctic blast is a brief weather phenomenon brought on by the entry of extremely cold air from the Arctic, whereas the polar vortex is a long-term atmospheric circulation pattern that, on occasion, can carry cold air southward and aid in the production of Arctic blasts. And now let's check the 5 deadliest blizzards of all time. The No-Name Storm. On March 12, 1993, a significant cyclonic storm formed over the Gulf of Mexico. It was variously called as the Great Blizzard of '93, the No-Name Storm, the '93 Superstorm, and the 1993 Storm of the Century. At its peak, the storm covered an area from Canada to Honduras. Its power, scale, and effect were unprecedented. After making its way through the Gulf of Mexico, the cyclone hit the eastern United States and eastern Canada. The North Atlantic storm eventually subsided. As a result of this storm, record low temperatures were seen in parts of the south and east of the United States. As a result of the hurricane, power was cut out to over 10 million homes across the United States. Approximately 40% of the country's population was impacted by the storm, and 208 lives were lost as a result. The storm killed 318 people and caused $2 billion in damage in 1993. Mount LeConte in Tennessee received 56 inches, 140 centimeters of snow, while Mount Mitchell in North Carolina, the tallest mountain in the eastern United States, received 50 inches, 130 centimeters of snow, leading to 15-foot, 4.6 meters, drifts. Both of the largest ever recorded snowfalls occurred there. The Great Blizzard. Prior to the blizzard, heavy showers turned to snow as temperatures fell. The storm started at midnight on March 12 and lasted 1.5 days. From March 11 to 14, 1888, a tremendous blizzard devastated the US, gaining the nickname Great White Hurricane. The storm shut down the east coast from Chesapeake Bay to Maine and the Atlantic regions of Canada. In New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut, snowfall ranged from 10 to 58 inches, 25 to 147 centimeters, while continuous wind gusts of over 45 miles per hour, 72 kilometers per hour, drove snowdrifts to over 50 feet, 15 meters. Up to a week after the railroads closed, people stayed home. After the power went out, railways and telegraph cables were moved underground. The emergency services suffered too. It took 8 days to clear the New York to New Haven rail link in Westport, Connecticut, and New York trains and vehicles were halted. After the storm disrupted transportation, the city built its first subway 9 years later. Over 200 ships were destroyed or sunk from Chesapeake Bay to New England, killing at least 100 mariners. The storm and cold killed almost 400 people, including 200 in New York City. Snow driven toward the Atlantic Ocean was supposed to go there. Carolean Death March. Sweden capitulated in the east in 1718 after losing the Great Northern War to Russia. To force Frederick IV of Denmark to make significant concessions during peace treaty negotiations, Charles XII of Sweden, who was too weak to resist, launched an attack on Norway. From Jämtland, Lieutenant General Carl Gustaf Armfelt led an unprepared army attack on Trondheim. In 1718, Armfelt failed to seize Trondheim. Hunger and poor weather reduced the Norwegian army from 10,000 to 6,000 troops. Armfelt received news of Charles' death on January 7, 1719, while his 6,000 men were in Haltdalen, Guldal. He passes across the Alps to get to Sweden quickly, but there's little snow, so he walks. 5,800 soldiers traveled from Haltdalen to Tydal in 1719. After leaving on January 12, 1719, bad weather delayed the Norwegian army's arrival in Handel by 2 days. In poor sight and frigid weather, Armfelt camped on a northern slope near Lake Essend. The men burned rifle butts and sleds to stay warm, but it didn't help. The cold killed 200 soldiers the first night, but most survived and reached Handel on January 15 and 16. At peak cold, 3,000 died. Another 700 troops died as they returned to Duved, where they were accommodated. The 2,100 survivors included 600 permanently disabled soldiers. The Afghanistan blizzard. Dry climate and arid steppe make Afghanistan prone to chilly winters and snowstorms. The Afghan mountains are known for blizzards and strong winds. Afghanistan saw the Afghanistan blizzard. On January 10, 2008, at least 926 people died in the higher Alpine as the temperature dropped to -22 degrees Fahrenheit and 70 inches of snow fell. This blizzard was among the 5 worst ever. The precise number is 3. Frostbite occurs when the skin and underlying tissues freeze due to prolonged cold exposure. Noses and chins can develop frostbite too. Frostbite forced at least 100 people, many of whom were walking barefoot in the snow, to have their feet amputated at hospitals nationwide. Weather killed about 315,000 livestock and 100,000 sheep and goats. More than 730 dwellings were destroyed by avalanches and rain. The Iran blizzard. In February 1972, Iran saw the worst snowfall. A week of exceptionally low temperatures and strong winter storms killed almost 4,000 people from February 3 to 9, 1972. Snowfall in rural Iran exceeded 3 meters (9.8 feet) due to storms in the northwest, center, and south. At least 4,000 people were buried by 26-foot snowfalls in southern Iran. Kakan and Kumar saw no survivors in Ardakan and its surrounding villages, according to Itelet. 100 Sheklab residents were slaughtered and buried in the far north. Western Iran got many snowstorms by January. The Azerbaijan-Iran snowstorm began on February 3 and dumped 7.988 meters of snow, enough to cover a 2.5-story skyscraper, until February 8. Woods and electrical cables were damaged. Many cars were trapped on snow-covered trains, highways, and neighborhoods. On February 9, rescue helicopters have 24 hours to operate. In villages, rescuers dug out big snowdrifts and uncovered frozen victims. Just before a blizzard, 18 remains were found in Sheklab on February 11. Their mission was abandoned by the rescue team. Army helicopters dropped 2 tons of bread and dates onto snowdrifts near civilian areas. This was done because people believed they could access food and supplies by digging a tunnel away. Nobody profited. 100 individuals died at Sheklab. As Max Mayfield says, preparation through education is less costly than learning through tragedy. You can suggest topics you want to see next in the comment section below. Please subscribe to Weather Collapse if you want to know more and be updated on the latest news about natural calamities or disasters happening all over the world, and don't forget to like today's video. We'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.